We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
All right, everybody. It's Live Show this week. So this week, we got myself, Mike, he, him, and Ward, he, him, from the Turn Leftist podcast. We got Brandon, he, him, from the Cars and Comrades podcast. We got Nat, he, him, from the Collective Action Comics podcast. We got Jamie, she, her, from the TransX Bombshell Twitch stream. And we got Ricky, him, from the Decolonized Buffalo podcast. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Hi.
Hello.
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, providing the circumstances, right? So I think the only thing that we will be talking about tonight is the recent mass shooting. And I mean, I think...
So you're going to have to be more specific. We're in America.
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, too. There has been another one. But I mean, the one that I guess is most relevant to our issues here, you know, the one at the, what was it, in Colorado, where they targeted the LGBT people. They targeted the
It was
safe
at a
space.
club called Club Q.
Thank you. Yeah, Jamie, I'm obviously going to defer to you for most of the talking points tonight. But yeah, obviously it's very tragic and not surprising. Like you said, there's been another one since then. That what was the other one? Can someone remind me? Since, like you said, this is the U.S.
It was in a Walmart.
Like
I forget.
Charlotte.
It was, yeah, I forget exactly where it was. It was like a manager or something too.
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, not to sound insensitive, it's not that I didn't realize that there had been that one. It's just that what I had been paying attention to regarding these mass shootings was the far-right rhetoric that led to the one at Club Q. And then, of course, the far-right reaction to it. And now even just the mainstream right reaction to it, which is to basically cheer on a mass shooter at this point. Like, they're not so explicit, at least not outside of their own safe spaces online and everything, but you can tell that the attitude towards this is generally ambivalent at best, if not outright saying, like, this person was right for doing this, and then trying to flip it back and say that, you know, because this person is now saying that they are non-binary or whatever, that they are somehow one of ours, and that somehow makes this, I don't know, like makes the right any less culpable for stoking the fear and the hatred towards LGBT people as much as they have been lately. And, you know, we have a lot of talking points about how exactly they've been doing it, like with the selective hashtags and everything. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that is the cool thing about actually judging people for the content of their character as opposed to the color of their skin or some other like inherent trait, is that even if this person is non-binary, we will still judge the fuck out of them for being a shitty person and murdering other people. You know what I mean? Like, we don't give them a pass for that. You know, like the right seems to think that we would do that and that there was some kind of privilege that they don't have. And yeah, simply not the case. But would you have, Nat?
Just to you said the like as if to characterize the shooter by, you know, themselves characterizing them as non-binary. What that to me says, besides just being perhaps a very cynical attempt on the part of their legal team to avoid like extra hate crime penalties, right? Is also that it lends credence to a parallel of the right's narrative of like black on black crime. Where they can say, well, this is just infighting in a certain group, and we can use that to condemn an entire group. You know, it's obviously not, I think, what it probably was meant to do. I think it was just, I don't know, right trolling or perhaps some sort of legal gambit, but it does lend ammunition for that sort of rhetoric to give rise.
And I'm going to go ahead and say I actually did not hear about this mass shooting that occurred apparently 4 days ago, and was in a Walmart where an overnight shift lead, shot 6 people. They are now happening faster than I can keep up with them legitimately.
No, a lot of them don't get big press or get like heavy reporting. But if you go and look at the statistics, we average multiple mass shootings a week in America, like every week.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I realized how insensitive it sounded earlier, just kind of ignoring this one, but it's just the political nature of the Q Club shooting as opposed to the Walmart one, which, who knows, that may end up being political related in some way because this person was overexploited and then got to this point where they snapped. I mean, you can definitely take a Marxist angle on that, but that's obviously not what we're talking about tonight. But what I brought tonight was just talking about how this is stoked in general by fascist rhetoric. And I wanted to see, Ward, I know that like the really juicy part about the story that everybody has been pulling at was the father of the shooter, who was this like, well, I guess like an adult film actor, and then also was on divorce court and all this stuff. Did you want to talk about this dude before I get into any of my very familiar rhetoric, how everything is fascism and everything is capitalism?
I mean, yeah, so like they did an interview with him at first, and like the dad was just a real piece of shit. Like obviously hopped up on meth, and then just saying just ridiculous things, like super proud of being like a conservative Christian Republican, and like saying like when he found out like his son was at a gay club, he was worried because his son was gay, and then he got told that he had committed a mass shooting at a gay club, and he was like, "Whew, at least he's not gay." He was very happy and proud about that. Like just a real piece of shit. And so like people started digging, and
He even bragged about how he taught his son that violence was like a respectable solution to a problem
yes,
he had
thank
and
you.
all.
Yeah,
And
almost
to
forgot
clarify,
about that.
Ward, like, not he's a piece of shit because he's addicted to meth. Like, if you got a problem with meth or whatever, like, seek help or whatever. That's not a character flaw. That's like a disease. But this dude is a fucking piece of shit for so many other reasons. Like the fact that he behaves this way on camera right after his progeny commits a mass shooting at a gay club and then acts like this. Like, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I do think it's important to mention that last year he was involved in an incident where he made bomb threats. He actually confronted law enforcement officers, and it appears they didn't.
That's the shooter, not the father, right?
Yeah, the shooter
Yeah.
did that.
That's
Yeah,
the shooter. Like this was known that this guy was of
yeah. Kel
violent nature.
Surprise.
He was definitely somebody that should have been, like, everyone keeps throwing around the term red flagged, or have his file at least noted for being someone that could potentially be a threat. And regardless of making a bomb threat and threatening law enforcement, that did not occur. And unfortunately, we're just kind of now finding out that there were a lot of chances that we had to prevent this, most likely. And
Meanwhile, you've got the FBI legitimately concocting their own terrorist threats, like getting online and goading people with certain mental vulnerabilities into committing crimes that the FBI themselves set up. Then literally driving those people to Walmart to get knives and stuff to commit those crimes, and then arresting them right before they commit the crimes the FBI pushed them into doing, and then using that to get more money.
Did you just describe conservatism as a mental invulnerability or mental
Not-
vulnerability?
I mean, in a form, yes, because these are people that have sort of ties to, or not ties to, but certain possible sympathies with something like the Taliban or ISIS or something like that, because they don't really have much of a stake in, say, national sovereignty of a country they don't really live in. I think, I don't know, but obviously there is the conservative aspect of those sort of reactionary groups.
honestly, this just shows a further flaw in our law enforcement system that I'll be often the one to keep pointing out. And I just want to real quick mention the severe. I mean, I mentioned he made bomb threats. He was literally booked on 5 felony counts, and there were counts of menacing and first-degree kidnapping. I mean, this is a guy that should have been. He should have triggered something to not.
I didn't mean to interrupt you if you weren't done. I'm so sorry.
No, I just wanted to really underline that point. Like, these were not like light charges. He was not an unknown. This is somebody that, like, the system should have known about. If they're going to keep track of people, that's the kind of person they should be keeping track of.
Yeah, there's a long history of FBI involvement or prior knowledge with mass shooters. Like, I think one of the most egregious was like the Parkland shooter, I believe. I might be wrong, but I think it was the Parkland shooter where the FBI agent like followed the kid to the school and took pictures of him getting out of his car with like guns and everything, about to go into the school to commit the mass shooting. And they got caught by local police fleeing the scene, and like it just got written off as a coincidence that the FBI agent was there.
Well, wasn't one of the Columbine shooters like? Wasn't his dad like FBI or something like that?
News to me.
It was they had some sort of like more proximal relationship to power than you'd expect.
Well, in this case, this person's grandfather, I think, is some conservative and very openly anti-gay, like kind of bigoted politician, right? I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Yeah, he's a politician in San Diego. The shooter.
Yeah, Clan T.
What I was going to point out is that this is all just like a very intentional targeting of the LGBT community, because they are just the the group that society deems okay to target now, just like it used to be gay people, and you see like all the very same rhetoric is being used. And I think people just don't have sort of an idea or just an understanding that this all stems from fascism. Like this literally all comes from fascist rhetoric starting from the literal Nazis. And, you know, we've mentioned it before. I think so there's a document that I reference, and I just have compiled a whole bunch of sources and everything. And if anybody online asks me for sources for you know, rebutting and debunking all the anti-trans rhetoric that goes around online, I give them this link, and we're gonna have to update it tonight. I think we're gonna have a new copy, but that's what will be in the show notes for anybody who wants more in-depth explanations and wants to have like sources for when people, you know, fucking online do the source bullshit that they're obviously not going to read because they have their opinions. But sorry, Ward, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to correct myself real quick. So it was the almost near mass shooting in Garland, Texas.
Okay.
And also, I want to, while we have the chance early in the episode, to correct some misinformation. It was a ex-military member and a trans woman who took down this shooter. She was improperly identified as a drag queen for, I don't know, something like a week from when the shooting actually took place. And it is, in fact, a trans woman that helped take down the shooter.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, credit to Red left that earlier in the group chat when he said that the only good thing about this was the fact that all these LGBT people got this guy and beat him the fuck down, like beat the living fuck out of this asshole. So that was nice to see, at least. You know, something that all those fucking armed to the teeth cops of all they could not do. These guys did with their bare hands. Like, and this kid was kitted up, like he had like body armor and shit. Like, these fucking cowards. But so like we've mentioned before, and I think this is going back to the first episode we ever did with you, Jamie, was just trying to literally address a lot of these same kind of misconceptions and myths and all the anti-LGBT rhetoric that goes around online that is still so prevalent despite it being so blatantly false and all these debunks so easy to find. But so most of the gender science that we have today still stems from Magnus Hirschfeld's work, and his work was literally what the Nazis were burning when they did the book burnings. Because he was a Jewish scientist and because they fucking hated gay people. They hated anybody who didn't conform to the gender binary. And still, a lot of the stuff that we have today is from his work. And let's see, what other talking points that I have? Like I said, I'm going to go over just the main points here. And then for more in-depth explanations, we will have a lot of links in the show notes. But the point that I'm making there is like literally, if your attitude toward trans people is anything less than full acceptance, you are already conceding to the fascist position. And just because you're not aware of that, like I'm not saying that you are a fascist if you are uncomfortable with trans people. I'm just saying the uncomfortability that you have with that is rooted in fascist rhetoric and a fascist mindset. And you can rid yourself of that. Like you can literally just decide to not be a bigot. And you can just look more into it and you will find that a lot of the stuff just makes sense. And the scaremongering bullshit that you've been fed does not. That's what I'm trying to get across here to, you know, I always have this imaginary liberal that we're talking to, right? I feel like we are pretty much preaching to the choir though, right?
Mostly socialists and commies, but suppose the occasional liberal might wander into the sound cloud.
Yeah, hopefully we'll give all of our comrades some good talking points for the next holiday. We got Christmas coming up. But
I can't remember how long ago it was, 2, 3, 4 months ago. We recorded an episode, and Connor, who keeps trying to make it onto this show but doesn't find himself able to, he like went on a rant about how the reason that all of the groomer rhetoric is starting in the right is just them like building momentum so that they can eventually try and purge any LGBT, any queer folks at all. Like that, it was obviously like that first fascist step.
Yeah.
And you know, when he said it, I'm like, I don't know, man, that does feel a little bit melodramatic. And now I'm like, well, shit, I owe Connor an apology because he fucking hit the nail on the head. Because I'm not as online as some of y'all, and even it's like permeating into like my sphere where I'm like people are reposting just these fascists talking about groomers and how like they need like, but just always referring to gay people, never referring to anyone who's actually in a position where they're going to take advantage of a child, like, you know, all of those conservatives that are generally the ones in those positions, your church officials, Boy Scout officials, anything like that.
No, Brandon, that's exactly the point that I really want to get to, is that this is an intentional thing that they're doing.
Mhm.
And their goal obviously is state mandated and institutionalized violence against LGBT people, but they will be perfectly satisfied with just stochastic terrorism, with just domestic terrorism, with just these random acts of violence that then go either just, thoughts and prayers and then no material retribution afterwards. They're perfectly fine with that happening. And I don't know. I mean, people just have to really start getting cool with getting armed and what their response to that needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
I saw images of. I don't know when this was from. I don't believe it was recent, but the image was floating around of a bunch of queer folks fucking armed up and defending like a queer book reading
I saw
somewhere.
that.
And everybody's decrying this as like not what the right to bear arms is supposed to be about, and how there need to be carve outs in the Second Amendment for shit like this. And it really shows you that they hold no position other than like, give me power.
Yeah.
I want to be on the in group. It's fucking disgusting.
We talked about you mentioned, like, the rhetoric is coming from the people who are actually perpetrating this, and I don't know if anybody here has read the I think it's from the 60s or 70s, the book by Jacques Ellul, just called Propaganda. And one of the major theses of the book is that so much of propaganda is direct projection, right? It's a refutation of one's own uh, behaviors by projecting those exact ones onto the group you're trying to demonize, right? And that can be on the international stage, that can be in the national political stage, or that can be on a more individual level, like what we're seeing between these particular groups of ridiculous conservatives and LGBTQ people just trying to live their fucking lives. And what we have here is a situation where one has structural power and the other does not.
Yeah, it's funny. There's that quote, and I don't know, it's attributed to Goebbels, and it was like, accuse the enemy of that which you are doing or whatever. And then if you look into it, they can't actually definitely attribute it to him. And then it gets attributed to a bunch of other people, but it is typically attributed as the fascist playbook. And another one that kind of reminds me of that is that the fucking chuds love. They love to quote Voltaire on Facebook, and when he says like to figure out who rules you, look at who you can't criticize, and then they'll be like, oh, of course that means that and like as if that trans people are like running our entire society. Like that's why you can't criticize trans people. It's just like, these people are so fucking dumb that we're dealing with. And that's what is so frustrating, that I harp on all the time, is that the facts are there. They are just resistant to them. Like, Brandon, I think you were hitting on it earlier. Like, they just are oppositionally defiant. It's just kind of a disorder if you're a conservative at this point.
Yeah, like I've never seen that Voltaire quote. I don't give a fuck about Voltaire. But that tracks. Yeah, like it blows my mind that they would like that the in this case the assertion would be like, maybe trans people don't have power, but like they have some sort of like social power. Not really sure the best way to phrase that, but because they don't understand the difference between their voice being suppressed and just people's friends not liking it when you bully them.
Yeah.
Like, because that's all it is when like when they're acting all like, oh, I'm not allowed to criticize trans people anymore. It's just like, well, you're being a bigot. No one's stopping you. You can say it, and millions of people on the fucking Twitter will praise you for it. Like, you're not being suppressed. You're just an asshole, and a lot of people are going to recognize that.
Yeah.
It's super true, and if you really want to actually take statistics into it, 8 out of 10 cases of like domestic violence, they try to say that like trans people are gonna harm people in the restroom, but 8 out of 10 times you know the person who commits some kind of domestic assault against you. And actually, trans people have a 64% chance of experiencing sexual assault. So if you want to look at the odds, the reality in the data doesn't reflect this abstract and completely fictitious viewpoint that the right just seems to insist is actuality. And It's just I don't really know what you do to convince a fascist of reality, but we are starting to learn that since we don't share it with them, it's becoming increasingly true.
Well, the fascist viewpoint is that they'll just sort of construct the reality that they want. And so they'll accept the facts that confirm their beliefs and they'll reject the ones that don't. So you're not going to convince them very effectively. Like, there's a few ways to convince them: 9mm, 40 cal, 7.62. You
All
know,
good. All good.
yeah,
Very effective.
yeah. You know that'll blow those ideas right out of their fucking head.
Yes.
Um,
I mean, you guys are touching on. So I wanted to mention the fucking hashtag that they use, like the libs of TikTok thing. The hashtag is this never happens, and if you fucking Google that, if you do yourself the psychic harm of the psychological harm of doing that, it's just a bunch of online trolls cherry picking incidents of violence or any other kind of crime, especially sexual, done by LGBT people, and then compiling it all because they want to build their narrative and they know that it's fictitious, so that this is what they have to do, and they're spending time doing this. And it's like the fact that they feel they need to spend the time doing this proves that this is the exception and not the rule. And of course, if you actually look into the stats, if you spend any time doing it, you will find that LGBT people are by far the outsized victims of violence, especially sexual. And they are not the perpetrators of it. That is simply not the case. But of course, these people want to build their narrative. They want to portray themselves as the victims and and LGBT people as the evil other. And it's not a coincidence that, like I said, because this is rooted in fascism, because this literally goes back to the fucking Nazis. It's not a coincidence that this all resembles the protocols of Elders of Zion with the targeting of children. And if you actually talk to these people at any length, because they don't have actual stats on their side, they have to reject modern biological science. They have to reject statistics, and they have to say that they usually end up saying that these things are the result of some kind of Jewish conspiracy if you actually press them on it. And yeah, they get there very quickly. Like, it is very obviously fascist stuff going on here. And yeah, we've already pointed out, like, it's the prelude to violence. I mentioned the libs of TikTok thing too. It's like, it's very clear, like, what these people are doing. Like, they are trying to dox and expose and ruin the lives, and either get these people to harm themselves because their lives have been ruined, or get them targeted by other people that they know are going to commit violence. Like, we can see exactly what the goals here are. They're very obvious about it. I don't know. Sorry, what do you have, Brandon?
Oh, I just wanted to point out that I don't think that a lot of these individuals are necessarily working on this project in the way that I'm about to describe intentionally. But as far as propaganda goes, especially when like you're already dealing with a large subset of the population who is maybe not openly fascist, but conservative enough that they only really need a little bit of a push to find a reason why they hate queer people of any vein. It's the repetition. You just like, it doesn't really matter that they found like the 4 stories or 5 stories of it ever happening going in the direction where a queer person is committing violence. All that really matters is that they just find those few and put them out there, and then everyone keeps repeating it and repeating it. And honestly, if you pay attention, man, there are ideas that are wrong that we've all heard and just sort of absorbed, because if you hear something enough, it feels true. And I think that that's the program that they're on, because
Yeah.
like nationally, it just gets bigger and bigger, and it's snowballing in a really scary way.
I can definitely second that. And I know I've mentioned this before in this podcast on an episode at some point, but it even broke back in 2017. I may have mentioned the Macedonian news compound. It was literally just turning out articles in favor of Trump, anti-Hillary. They even dabbled in some pro-Bernie and things, but literally just Google Macedonian fake news, and it was for that year a major part of their GDP. They generated so much income from creating fake news that they've had to completely overhaul the rules for like political news articles and things on Facebook. There's like a limited time period now on Facebook, for example, before an election, where they make you submit articles for review, and you can't actually submit political advertisements just before an election as a result of this type of commerce. I
Jesus.
guess you could kind of call it commerce loosely, but it's literally just the result of having a for-profit media conglomerate, like nationally, if not internationally. And they just literally created the articles people wanted to read. It didn't matter if it was true. It didn't matter if they had proof. They just literally started creating things that were like, pro-Trump. And I mean, I'm trying to just skim the stats here, but I mean, between August and November of 2017, the guy that ran the website that they interviewed, and this was like a Vice article, like a Vice interview. I'm currently reading it on Wired.com, but he was making like $16,000 a month off his 2 pro-Trump websites.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy was bringing in bank, and that was just like the beginning of his operation. This went on for years through the election.
Just as a quick aside, like one of the most common things when I talk to like a liberal or anyone who like disagrees with me, they always like to throw the whole like, oh well, Venezuela or China or Cuba or like pick your poison, like that's you really trust their state-run media, and it's like I don't know, man. Do you really trust our billionaire-run media,
Which
like,
is also state-run?
Well, fair enough. But just like the idea that like somehow media is more trustworthy if it's for profit is funny,
Yeah.
if not so upsetting.
Yeah, like Viacom got something like 213 billion in subsidies over the last like 5 or 6 years. Oh, I'm sorry, 20 years. I just looked that up. And like, if they didn't publish stuff that the State Department didn't like, they wouldn't be underwritten so heavily. So you can't tell me that we don't have state-run media, right? It's just ridiculous.
It doesn't even have to be state-run. I mean, it's pretty profitable just to throw some another turd on the pile. Like, it doesn't even have to be state-run. There's fully functional for-profit, just news, fake news, whatever you want to call it, just operations doing it just for the money. Literally no like state incentive.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing is, it's not a state incentive for our media right now. It's a profit incentive, and they get the profit by that underwriting. So they just play ball, basically, right? It's more of a tacit understanding than a direct dictatorial relationship.
Fair enough.
And I mean literally dictatorial, like words being dictated, not like...
That sounds like our CIA if I've ever heard of them.
A thing that will never stop blowing my mind, and I could cite instance after instance after instance of this, is that I'm pretty sure if you just sat down and did the math, it would actually just be cheaper to make sure that people were fed, housed, and had healthcare than it would be to like continue propagandizing them and like propping up all of these things to like make people like cope with the fact that they don't have those things.
Yeah, but cheaper
And
for who? Cheaper for us? Yes. Cheaper for the billionaires? No. Because we're
Maybe.
the ones that subsidize. No, because we're the ones
Well,
that
for the
subsidize
government.
that through our taxes. Subsidize that sort of work, right? And like you can talk about, but never mind. I'm not going to get into that because that's so far off topic where what we're talking about right now.
No, we can
But-
definitely do.
I like that you're getting worked
Well,
up.
I mean, I do mean
Well, I love
everyone.
this
Like
stuff.
I
We're
picked
not
this
that
up.
far off topic.
Yeah, it is pretty off topic.
I don't think so. I think one thing begets the other.
Fair enough.
When we live in a state of like complete disillusionment, like this is the kind of media that gets created that generates these types of events.
Are you guys trying to tell me that the government exists to be used as a tool by the elites to suck money from us, to then be used
Right.
to police us so that we go to work for them and make them a whole bunch of money that doesn't get taxed, and that the government
Mike?
only exists as a tool for them to do that? But then the libertarians are only mad at the tool and not the guys themselves who are using that tool, even though they don't get that. That's a perfect analogy for AR-15s, like our Sterling so geniusly realized once.
I'm even here to tell you that it may not even be so much about the money as it is the relationship to the power dynamic. I have a hunch.
Well,
No.
almost like it's the means of
Yeah.
production, right? Not to bring it back to fucking
I
fundamentals.
think I've heard of that.
I
Fucking
agree with you, but
101
like I
shit.
picked it at the beginning of COVID. I picked up on the fact that like a lot of companies, a lot of wealthy people, and maybe economically this would not have worked out the way I thought, but like especially compared to China's economic handling of COVID, it seemed like they were so quick to sacrifice long-term profits for short-term profits. It's like on a 6-month or 1-year
And
timeline,
lose
they actually
both.
could. Yeah, they were perfectly willing to sacrifice everything just to try and do like an immediate cash grab.
I think it's further than that too. I think that labor absolutely had to be disciplined.
I could
think
agree with that.
I think they were investing long term in the continued control of the attitude, right?
It-
But all of this,
So kind of the way they'll spend billions busting unions.
exactly, rather than just letting a union exist. But like we're talking about, right? This idea of controlling a narrative, and if we bring it back to the topic we were
Okay.
talking about, right? The Club Q shooting, right? This is something that I wanted to bring to the table too, and I want to be very clear when I talk about this that I am not trying to diminish the horrors that were inflicted upon the queer community, the LGBTQ plus community, right? When I talk about, I get annoyed when I see people drawing certain parallels between the Pulse nightclub shooting and the Club Q shooting, because all evidence that we have shows us that we have a collective memory hole about the Pulse nightclub shooting, because people don't seem to remember that Omar Mateen, the perpetrator of the shooting, told 911 responders that he was like pledging himself to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and the ISIS or ISIL project, and that he was doing this shooting as a direct response for U.S. bombings in Syria, right? And I have a feeling that his opinions about the queer community are not so hot, right? It's probably a safe bet to say that he has some conservative, backwards fucking ideas. However, his direct and literally quotable response to all of this, his justification for it, was that he was just looking to respond to seek revenge for the U.S. bombing of Syria, right? For airstrikes, specific airstrikes in Syria. He even went looking for other places, like specifically Disney properties, because what represents American characteristics more than fucking Disney properties, right? Before he settled in the Pulse nightclub, and the Pulse nightclub was undefended, and that's why he decided to take it out, right? And of course, it as was pointed out before we actually started recording, it's a very good point to bring up that it was probably undefended because we live in a fucking hellhole country where the so-called authorities aren't going to defend a marginalized group with any of their resources. So there's no cops outside. There's nobody there to make sure that this sort of thing doesn't happen, right? But we have people like drawing this, like saying that like that the Pulse nightclub shooting was purely for homophobic reasons, right? And I mean, there might have been something like that involved, but that's not purely what it was for. And I don't ever want to speak.
To Facebook during the shooting.
Mhm.
You kill innocent women and children by doing U.S. airstrikes. Now taste the Islamic State vengeance.
There you go. There you go. I mean, that's not. And again, I'm not trying to diminish anything like this, and I would never, ever, 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 ever want to speak for a group that I am not part of. But I would like to think that if I were gay or trans or something like that, then I think I might be furious that my identity was being used as a smokescreen to cover these crimes of empire.
I mean, it's definitely still kind of demonstrating exactly what we've been talking about, that literally our state atrocities committed by our government directly caused this individual to attack the most vulnerable population in the United States, arguably. I mean, you could say possibly the unhoused or other communities, but one of the most vulnerable in consideration.
Certainly the most currently propagandized against.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's almost like the smokescreen is actually being caused by a government that doesn't want to atone for that being an indirect cause.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, not to say that like now, I think you're doing a good job of making it clear that you're not trying to diminish the fact that that was a shooting of some LGBT people. But does anybody really think that any mass shooting is just driven by one idea and one idea only? like pretty much anybody who does that has to have some kind of level of mental illness as well. And that's usually what the right capitalizes on because they want to shift away from the hate rhetoric that drove it. They want to shift away from gun control, obviously. And so in the case of the what was it, the Pulse Club that you're talking about?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's of course what they're going to capitalize on. They're going to say that look, the Democrats are trying to co-opt this for political reasons, and trying to defend and shove the LGBT thing down our throats. When this guy wasn't even anti-LGBT, this wasn't even about that. It was about airstrikes in Syria, and they're trying to hide that from you. And that's when the right loves to do that thing where they criticize empire when the Democrats ignore it, as if the Republicans are going to then meaningfully do something about empire when they get
Yeah,
into
they say
office.
it.
Like, but yeah, but like I said, I think you're doing a good job. Even if the guy had specifically said something positive about gay people on his Facebook or whatever, I don't think that's the case. I think there probably is an element of LGBT hate in there because, like you said, he's praising ISIS. Like it's pretty.
I mean, he
it's
wouldn't
pretty
shoot
obvious
somebody
how
he liked.
Yeah, exactly. He obviously felt
Yeah.
like these people were disposable to him. So
Hmm.
I mean, we can argue that he didn't know it was a gay nightclub when he Googled it, but when he showed up and it was a gay nightclub, he still walked in.
Hmm.
Rick's got something. What's up, Rick?
Yeah, I have a question. What's the background of the shooter? Does anyone know, like, Hispanic or white, or
The
what
Club
was
Q
it?
guy?
Right?
Well, you're talking about Anderson Lee Aldrich.
Okay, yeah. To me, I'm not trying to blame, because in Texas there was some mass shooters and they were Hispanic, but they were like hardcore right wing, right? But I just want to know what the background was, because to me, I'm learning about the situation, and this guy's pledging to, what's it, Al Qaeda or some shit like that, right?
That was
So,
the
like,
at the Pulse one, yeah.
That was the Pulse one. That was
That
like
was a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Oh, okay. Because I was
2016.
just like, what the? Okay, because I was wondering, like, I was like, what does some country as
Yeah,
white
yeah.
dude have to do
No.
with, pledging
there's
his
just-
allegiance to Al Qaeda?
No, the guy's
There's
name was
a
Omar
lot-
Mateen, and I think he was of Syrian descent. I think.
Oh,
And there's just a lot
but
of
I do have a
connecting the
comment. This country, this is the most stereotypical comment, but this country was founded on violence, right? And it's been nonstop violent. The system we live in is violence. We have to, like, get money and be better than other people, and it's, even though you have to fuck them over, on a personal level, emotional level, whatever. It's always violence, and it's always like fighting. We live in a society where we're always like dog eat dog fighting. And I think, I think I saw somewhere where this is the second year in a row where we had over 300 mass shootings in 1 year, right? So it's, what do you expect from a country that's just founded on violence and no solidarity between communities, and it, to me, is very convenient, for the right wing to claim the LGBT communities or groomers or whatever the hell when this happens. To me, just demonizing more and justifying the violence against them, against this community, I think is really gross. So I think, yeah.
I mean, we're talking about the same country that throws away more than $218 billion in food every year, and yet has 34 million people in food insecurity. It's the same country.
Jesus
So
Christ.
I feel a little bit weird drawing this comparison. I don't think it's objectionable. It's just I think it's going to take a little bit of explaining on my part. But like in the 70s and 80s, like there weren't really mass shootings, mass murders like there are now. It was more serial killers, and a lot of serial killers that were able to run unchecked for extended periods of time, like decades sometimes, was because they preyed on vulnerable communities. It wasn't maybe necessarily that they hated poor black people. It's that they knew if they killed poor black people, then there weren't going to be any repercussions. And if they kill a rich white lady, the police are actually going to be looking for that killer. And so, Nat, I think that is kind of what you're getting to the heart of it. It's not necessarily that he liked or hated LGBT people. It's that he went to that nightclub because it was the safest for him to do violence in.
It was vulnerable, structurally vulnerable.
but systemically vulnerable.
Wow, I had to.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
Kind of check that.
Oh, I thought you meant like the building being on guard.
Well, I have no idea. Maybe it was a shitty building.
Yeah.
I mean, you make this claim that there was, previously less mass shootings. So I mean, I had to just go verify that.
Oh, am I
And
wrong?
No, if you look up mass shootings, they're by decade up until 2011, and then they're by year.
Fuck.
Yeah. If I
Jesus.
recall correctly, Columbine really it wasn't the first, but it really set things in motion.
I mean, I'm referencing, this is like anecdotal. I mean, it's like I'm looking at Wikipedia, but I mean, they've categorized them by decade up until 2011, and after that, it's listed by year.
Yeah, for this year, it's looking something like 607 to 610 so far this year,
Oh my God.
which is on track to possibly beat out last year, which was 638.
Yeah, they get longer every year.
I thought that I was bummed out because I was thinking it was 300 to 400, and I was really fucking far off.
Yeah. So getting back to I guess some of the talking points that I just wanted to hit on real quick. Yeah, we got about 15-ish left.
Do you mean the
So-
ones from the beginning of the episode?
Well, I mean, just what I have in the general chat over here. But yeah, I mean, it's all gonna be random stuff that will spur some discussion. Trust me. But I was talking about just the hypocrisy of the people who were doing all the anti-trans rhetoric and everything. And I had mentioned like the libs of TikTok and everything. Like this person hasn't even been deplatformed, and they'll act like this person is a victim because they got outed like with their real name, as they are literally doing that exact thing. They're outing people with their real name and face online, making them a target for violence. And yeah, I mean, they're getting mad about this, and I think you guys have probably all seen this too. Like, it's not wrong to deplatform factually incorrect information. Just to hit some more talking points, biological science clearly states that gender and sex are not the same thing. Being trans is not a mental illness, and the best treatment for anyone with any kind of gender identity issue is transition therapy, as prescribed by a physician on a case-by-case basis. And I have like a whole list of slides that I can also put the text of or just put the links to in the show notes and everything as to like regarding like what people think is happening to children regarding like them being targeted or like any kind of like irreversible therapies being done to them. And the short answer is it is fucking not happening. It is literally not happening. Like these people are making up a fake problem and getting themselves whipped into a fucking frenzy over absolutely nothing. There is nothing irreversible being done to anyone before they hit puberty, before they hit like any kind of age of maturity. Nothing irreversible is done. That is the whole point of what is going on, is they are doing the least harm, and they are making sure that these people have the best possible time that they can dealing with this fucking social construct that has been placed upon them. And like I said, I have plenty more details in the show notes and everything if you want like in-depth explanations. What's up, Brandon?
I was just going to say one of my favorite ways of dealing with some of those assholes, and I don't remember the facts as well as I used to, but basically anytime somebody wants to get all like, there's only two genders, point out to them that there's not even only two biological sexes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Intersex
what-
people
like-
exist.
Yeah. And there's
so
not even
didn't-
just one kind of intersex. Like, if we assign one gender for each like biological sex, you're still at 4 or 5, something like that, bud. So fuck off if you want to throw science at us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is why they've shifted their position to, they call the left intolerant for not tolerating their ideas. I don't know if
True.
you guys have noticed that same thing, that they're like, oh, the left is intolerant of our ideas. It's like, no, you're fucking wrong. And you just won't admit it. Like, you literally are just wrong. The information is there. You just won't find it. And then if you do find it, you refuse to accept it. Like, you just dismiss it as if it's like, literally going back to what I was saying before, they will call it Jewish science. Like, they will say it's like liberal science that is not proven. They just dismiss it out of hand. Would you have
I don't reject their claim. I am intolerant of hate.
Yeah.
You want to be a
Carl
bigot?
Popper
I
Project.
will intolerate your skull into the fucking ground.
And even if we didn't have all this science to dunk on them and dunk on them and dunk on them, I would just say, just who fucking cares, man? Just let it be. It's fine. It's not hurting you at all. Just let it go. Just be happy. Just be happy. Just play Stardew Valley and be happy. That's all I ask, man.
So one of my favorite things to point out for this whole movement, if you could call it that, of anti-trans people speaking out, is there's like a detransition movement, and there's a couple of people that have gotten a little acclamation being really outspoken against like allowing transitioning procedures for youth, and just really kind of being critical of having access to puberty blockers and things like that. But even, for example, like Kai Shevers, who's one of the most known for being an outspoken critic and a detransitioner, is now in the process to transitioning again. And that actually is true for a lot of the most outspoken critics who do proudly claim they have detransitioned. They don't stay detransitioned. They're not. They're not.
Self-loathing is a motherfucker.
they're not the ones that should be speaking on these items. They're trans people that are trying to speak against, a community that they sometimes feel shunned by, but quite honestly, it's not a cohesive community, at least not from my experience, but that's besides the point. I just want to be very clear that there's people who make really like well-known brands, I guess you could call it, or just like a channel on YouTube or something like that. But then you don't hear about when they decide to retransition, and people will continue to cite these people who speak out against the evils and the dangers of transitioning and what it can do to your body. They don't give you that part, that they actually end up going back, transitioning, and continuing in their transition.
I had no
Can I
idea.
just mention how disgusting it is that the right does this thing where they do the concern trolling and they feign that this anti-trans rhetoric is because they're just concerned for trans people. Like they're like, oh, we just don't want them to act on a mental illness and then do some kind of irrevocable damage to themselves. And it's like, drives me so fucking nuts.
This
It drives me
country
so
has
crazy.
we've afforded so little for like transgender research and rights. And if we look to a country like Sweden that's actually allowed access to medical care for transgender individuals for a much lengthier part of time of our collective history, they will actually tell you the stats show that less than 3% of people who medically transition experience transition regret.
That's the tactic of the right. They use people, they tokenize them. They had native people talk all this nonsense about anti-socialism and how the reservations were socialism's gone bad or whatever. So they always, they look at Candace Owens, or Kanye. They always use people to, say, oh, this, native person, or this black person, or this Mexican person thinks the same as I do. My opinion is right. They always tokenize these people, but they don't ever, when these people start speaking out against them, they start demonizing them. So it's, it's a typical right-wing ploy.
Oh man. So wait, did you just say something about how people are pointing out that native reservations are socialism gone wrong?
Yeah, that was a video a couple years ago where it was Turning Point USA. It was funded by
God.
Turning Point USA. Yeah, and it was like this Navajo lady saying that reservations are socialism gone wrong. But I mean, obviously, it's really shallow concept of socialism, and it's really concept shallow of the history of reservations and treaty policies, and just the history of the country, because reservations are not socialism. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's Turning Point USA, and I think a lot of natives you know, um, were like, what the fuck is this shit? But there were some natives that I know personally that were reposting that because the native community is not monolithic. There's so many different people, just like any other community. There's people that are on the right. So some native people were like using that as an example to hate on Marxism, but whatever. I mean, like natives that understand history know that's bullshit. So
Yeah, I mean, so it's just a classic example, right, of capitalism doing something and then it fucking people over, and then other people being like, "What? Why did socialism do this?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
was the basis like for like like Native American reservations being socialist, like that they got land and like quote unquote got land and money from like the government? Is that like the whole basis for it? So I feel like that's the only stretch they could make.
yeah, I think that's the thing is treaty policy or treaty. I forgot the goddamn word already, but it was the expectations. So like go on this reservation, and the government's going to give you so much of commodities, food or supplies to harvest the land, whatever. So we still get some money for programs, but that money doesn't really go far, right? So they think so. These people, these stupid people that are making these points together are saying that that reservations are it's just socialism since we are getting treaty provisions from the government, but it's not socialism because reservations were made to keep natives in control, to to assimilate them to colonial life, and even down to allotments, to like the reservation was broken up into acres, into individual acres for individual natives, and then even that was made to individualize natives because when they figured out that even though the natives were on reservations, they're very communal. But this is totally off topic.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that, I
Yeah.
understand that this
Sorry.
could be a whole different podcast. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's
I didn't
super
mean to take
valid.
us off topic. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
But
That's
yeah,
not
no, I
socialism,
see.
though. They don't own the means of.
But it's not
production.
socialism.
Mhm.
No way. I mean, real
Marxism is when the
socialism,
government
it-
gives you money.
Yeah, it's some stupid shit. But I would, the last thing I'm going to say is I think our economies are socialist because we nationalize our economies and they fund our programs. But you can listen to that on the podcast, but whatever.
Mhm.
So, but I agree, there are people that they tokenize. So it's a ploy they use and they put out this disinformation. It's always disinformation.
And I've seen people try to legitimately price Ben make the case that all countries that have central banks are socialist. Therefore, like all countries are like hilarious, but it's just one of those things. But I mean, also just to make the case that native reservations are socialism gone wrong is to ignore the hundreds of thousands of years of socialism gone right, where these people existed on Turtle Island and did not bring about the end of civilization through fucking mass industrialization and climate change. It's like it's a little bit ironic for everybody now who was trying to tout all the benefits of capitalism, who's trying to explain again how it's going to not kill us all. But I'll let them try to do it. No one's been able to do it
becoming an
yet.
ant prim as we speak.
Ted posting, do it.
Yeah, no, I have to leave.
I'm here for it. Let's go.
No.
I don't know. We got about 5 more minutes, and I went through all the talking points that I wanted to get through. You know what? Let me actually just read through a couple of these things from the slides that I went to because I think people will actually really like them, and it might get some people to click the link and get to these notes that I have that I want people to really understand. So, regarding, like I said, the targeting of children, or any kind of myth that these children are being subjected to anything against their will or whatever. So, regarding transgender children, are they given hormones and surgery? If a child comes out as transgender pre-puberty, they are allowed to choose their clothing, toys, hairstyle, name, and pronouns, all of which is obviously completely 100% reversible. At Tanner stage 2 puberty, I guess, Jamie, it's Tanner stage. Is that like some kind of designation? Is that something? I've just never heard of that.
That's actually not a term I'm familiar with. Let me Google.
Oh, okay, never mind.
It sounds like
something that was in the infographic, so I just accepted it as wrote.
It sounds
I
like
like
a
Jamie's just like,
biological
I don't know,
cervix.
man. I
It's
just
like a
work here.
biology term.
Sorry, yeah.
No,
I do keep referring to Jamie for all this stuff, of course.
Well, no, it is from the National Library of Medicine. They have puberty marked in Tanner stages.
Mm.
It was actually something I was unfamiliar with. So thank you.
But so they say at this stage 2, puberty blockers are given to buy the child more time to consider, discuss with parents and medical or mental health professionals, and decide whether to move forward with transition or not. They are 100% reversible with no negative effects to reproductive ability when stopped by age 16. At the age of 16, either blockers are stopped and natural puberty is allowed to progress normally, or blockers are continued, and cross-sex HRT is started to allow the child to progress into puberty of the preferred sex, again, at a normal time for puberty. Top surgery for both trans boys and girls is available at around the age of 16, coincidentally the same age when cisgender girls are allowed to have elective breast augmentation. Bottom surgery is generally held off until the age of 18. This goes for all bottom surgeries, including those that result in sterilization. So right off the bat, like that is the big thing. Like what is it the conservatives are always trying to hound is that like they're literally cutting little boys' dicks off or something. It's like, not to be too crass about it, but like that's what they are trying to fucking fearmonger about. They are trying to make it seem like they're doing irreversible genital surgery to minors and like little kids, and it's simply fucking not happening. But
On every level, not to minors, not irreversible, like
yeah,
well, except for I guess top and bottom surgery to a degree, but Like,
But like the amount of
So-
consideration and thought and like that goes into it beforehand, like this is not some kind of flippant thing. Like
So
Mhm.
this is the Tanner stages. They have 3 categories. There's the pubic hair scale, which is applied to people that identify as male and female. And then there's a female breast development scale. And lastly, there's a male external genitalia scale. All 3 have 5 stages based on various developments. Stage 1 of the pubic hair scale, for example, is no hair, and stage 5 is terminal hair that extends beyond the inguinal crease onto the thigh. So, like length, the actual pubic hair length. And then the female breast development has to do with whether or not the breast tissue is palpable. And then the final stage is an areolar mound that recedes into the breast contour. So that would be like nipple protrusion. There's actually papillic development. And then for the male external genitalia scale, it has to do with testicular volume, which is
how loud are your testicles?
yeah, I knew somebody was gonna do it. I knew it.
so. I mean, these
Whoa,
are.
I can't even hold a stethoscope up to him.
I mean, honestly though, like your testicle volume, like how long the axis is, we're talking like milliliters, like 2.5 centimeters, then 3.3 centimeters. Like this is still like this doesn't seem super specific. It seems like it could vary for different individuals, and I mean it just seems like sort of like a general reference point. I
Yeah.
mean these numbers don't seem like they could be static for every individual.
But I mean, that just still goes to the point that this has all been being taken on an individual and case by case basis with people who know what they're doing. This is not some kind of thing that like your teacher is transing your kid because they feel like it. It's like the way that these fucking conservatives are trying to make it seem, like it blows my mind. But let me finish up this infographic real quick. We can go a couple more minutes because it actually works out well if we go a little bit over. So this is the schedule for allowed transition processes, not required. A lot of trans people choose not to go through some or even all of the steps. The entire process is incredibly patient-centered and includes years of gender therapy to ensure that before any medical steps are taken, children that are confused or unsure are weeded out of the process. Preventing the permanent changes that natural puberty brings to transgender children saves lives. You can't ungrow breasts in a trans boy, and you can't ungrow facial hair or undeepen the voice of a trans girl. Preventing natural puberty ensures that the child will be better able to pass and integrate into society later, and prevents the need for expensive and invasive surgeries to correct the wrong puberty at a later point. And I also just want to make this point here, like
Mhm.
another like common misconception or just intentional fucking talking point that these assholes have is that trans people like are mentally ill and they're just like bad off whether or not they have any kind of gender therapy or because of the gender therapy or whatever, or that they commit suicide at some kind of outsized rate. And literally it is because you are fucking harassing them. It's because bigots and fucking people like you exist and you look at them weird, you treat them wrong, you intentionally misgender them. Like all the fucking piece of shit things that these people do, it is because you do this shit to them online and in real life all the time that they have a little bit of a hard time going through this fucking hostile world. And like the fact that people don't see that, like they intentionally are obviously just like being fucking hypocritical. And it just really fucking makes me angry. Sorry, Brandon, what's up? Sorry.
Amen.
So the conservative position is that people with mental illness should be able to buy guns but not have bodily autonomy.
Mhm.
Sick.
Also, I want to make the point too when it says the thing about like about passing in society, right? Like I long for a world where if I were to choose to change my own gender or even sex, right? I wouldn't have to worry about passing. I could, set my own goal.
Let me, if I could, let me also just, since we're going over a little bit, let me read some of these slides I also took from the Proletarius page. Shout out to fucking Proletarius on Instagram. The guy's got another fantastic page, but he posts a lot of really, mostly like tweet oriented, his pages. But so he posted these things earlier today. 0 children have been sexually assaulted at a drag show. Literally thousands of children have been sexually assaulted at evangelical church camps. It isn't and has never been about protecting children. And it was just like a quote tweet to somebody saying, like, earlier this year, the Southern Baptist Convention acknowledged they spent years protecting over 700 ministers and church workers who were credibly accused of sexual abuse. And so then it follows a daily reminder that a child sex abuse scandal almost identical to the one that has been an open secret in the Catholic Church, is present in both Southern Baptist and Mormon congregations, yet almost nobody talks about it. They go on to talk about this guy, in the New York Post, this guy says, I took my 9-year-old son to Hooters to celebrate good grades. Trolls say I'm creepy as fuck. And somebody says, this is way fucking weirder than taking your kid to a drag show will ever be. Yeah, it's like fucking, it's just weird to do.
Yeah, that's liberation versus oppression. Like, oppression feels normal, like in our culture. So going to Hooters does not seem as wild as to where going to a drag show that's liberatory. Like, it's people getting to be who they want to be and be free, and be happy. But that's not viewed as normal. Like, any degree of liberation is not viewed as normal or good. So can't have
Brandon,
that.
were you following along with that tweet slideshow as I was reading them, Brandon?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because the next one was Good Politic Guy on Twitter. He goes straight.
Oh no, I'm not doing it right now. I thought you meant like, am I listening to you? And I'm like, yeah.
No. Like I don't know if you were reading along because the next one was like exactly that. He says straight cis white dude who both attended drag shows as a kid and went to Catholic school K to 12. I can say the church fucks you up sexually infinitely more. Drag show lesson: be confident in yourself, whoever that is. Church: be ashamed of everything because God will send you to hell. It's like pretty much exactly what you were saying. Like,
I just don't understand this. Like, it's like a mental, like, it's literally going against reality because they want to say that like drag shows are indoctrinating children and like sexualizing children, but like, explain child beauty pageant. Like, literally, that's what that is. Not the drag.
I would, but then this episode would probably get like taken down.
It just doesn't. It's a cognitive dissonance. That's the word I'm trying to find. It doesn't make logical sense.
Cognitive dissonance is the only thing that holds America together.
Yeah,
literally.
Reinforced by the New York Times.
They go on. Another one says this thing on the U.S. right, where queer people and leftists are routinely labeled as groomers, i.e., as a direct physical predatory threat to children, is the project of defamatory social reclassification you get as reactionaries move toward exterminationist social cleansing. And further to that point, another one says conservatism consists of exactly one proposition, to wit, there must be in-groups whom the law protects but does not bind, alongside out-groups whom the law binds but does not protect. And let's see, states have to fine-tune their open carry laws. This is not the intent. Oh, this is the one you were talking about earlier, Brandon. You were saying that as soon as trans people were showing up armed to protect other trans people, then they would start talking about the open carry laws being in need
I can
of
never
regulation.
remember where I see anything, but I guess I saw it in the group chat. Okay.
Yeah. And then
Reagan and the Black Panthers. Anybody?
Oh yeah.
Exactly. That was the Mulford Act, right? Because that was the next tweet. Is exactly that? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I also didn't read that tweet slide.
No, you guys are it's crazy. Like, I just posted this. Shout out to fucking Proletarios. Like, that's a great thing about what he posts is like there's a other good thought process from 1 to 10 through it, and it's fantastic posting. I like it. But they say prepare for the right to suddenly start getting really concerned about gun control now that they know trans folks and their allies are visibly able to protect themselves. It's happened before. The Mulford Act was signed by then Governor Reagan with the NRA's blessing. So that settles it, right? It's very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like we said, the point is to get more of this violence to happen. And the other thing I wanted to just bring up, because I brought it up before, but I'll bring it up again because it seems to have been totally forgotten by most people, just like your point earlier, Nat, is that there was that bomb threat that successfully ended the Title IX investigation. And I'm going to link to it again in the show notes, but no one fucking talks about that. The right is very keen to make a big stink about some Antifa destroyed cities from a couple fucking years ago that didn't actually happen, but they don't care about domestic terrorism when it's literally people calling in bomb threats to end court investigations and successfully being able to do it. So, yeah, if it isn't clear where the priorities of the state lie, who they're protecting, who they are not protecting, yeah, it should just be very clear. And I just want people to stop taking even the fucking liberal line on these things, 'cause it's just like you're only enabling the right when you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So never has there been a drag queen charged with sex crimes against a minor, but there's currently an ongoing article on COS, which isn't my favorite website, the Daily COS.
Yeah.
But they're now on the 32nd part of the series titled Republican Sexual Predators, Abusers, and Enablers. and they're up to instance 800.
Oh fuck.
800 instances of Republicans either being a sexual predator or abuser or enabling it. For example, number 800 is of a Virginia Attorney General who accused Democrats of being soft on pedophiles in his campaign. But after 2 months in office, he made a plea deal with a pedophile cop, actually dropping one of the charges. And the
He
Virginia
was comfortable being rock hard on pedophiles.
Boo.
I'm trying not to laugh at that. The Virginia GOP denied there was ever a plea deal, but it's public. It's dated March 3rd, 2022. So I mean, it's just
Yeah.
exactly.
We'll have to put that
Everybody
link in
go
the show
read
notes as
Jacques
well, right?
Ellul.
What was that?
I said everybody go read Jacques Ellul. It's the propaganda, the mechanisms of propaganda.
Are we
right.
really going to link the daily cost in the show notes?
I mean, we'll at least put it in the
I'm
big
sorry,
long paste bin that's going to
listeners.
have all the
Just-
resources. That's the idea.
Just
Like I
put
said,
the CIA propaganda red flag on it.
I just want
Hey,
to I just
broken
want to
clock, right?
apologize to all the listeners for linking the daily cost just in advance.
Mhm.
All right, so let's wrap it up there. But like I said, we're going to have a ton of links in the show notes and then have a big text file that will be linked to in the show notes to hopefully have a response and a debunk to every talking point you can possibly have to encounter from your fucking bigoted relatives at the next holiday or the trolls you encounter online or whatever. That is the goal, right? I want to give you the ammo to come back at all these people. Like I said, not that they can be convinced by facts, but whatever.
Sure, but also, you know, I always like to give my little ray of sunshine if I can. I do want to point out, despite the bullshit, despite the oppression, despite the obvious hate attacks on the community, as of July, the Victory Fund, which is an LGBTQ political advocacy organization here in our neoliberal hell, they at least did mention that there are 55 trans candidates alongside 20 gender non-conforming candidates and 18 non-binary candidates, and including 4 two-spirit candidates running for office. And that's a record for the most gender non-conforming people running for political office in the United States.
Damn.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Let that be a message to all the fucking alt-right fucks who think that they can make these people go away. We think that they're going to like somehow win this issue. Like, you lost the battle against gay people, you're going to lose the battle against trans people. Just fucking give it up. Just stop being a fucking dickhead. Like, you're done. Like, all right. Unless anybody has
Mhm.
anything else, you guys want to wrap it?
I'm good.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. We'll do it again next week.
All right.
It's
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Easy.
Oh yeah. See you guys
Thanks, everybody.
later.
Love y'all. Solidarity.